The average American backyard devotes over 80% of its space to plants you can't eat. Thousands of square feet growing nothing but curb appeal. But 9 specific perennials, some cultivated since ancient Egypt, others prized in royal kitchens, can produce gourmet harvests worth $200 to $500 a year and still look stunning enough for your front yard. The question is why almost nobody's growing them. Across the United States, more than 80% of residential yard space is filled with plants chosen solely for their looks, such as turf grass, flowering borders, and decorative shrubs, while food-producing crops are pushed to the margins. That means millions of square feet, from coast to coast, are locked into a cycle of mowing and mulching, with nothing edible to show for it. Yet, buried in the data from the latest USDA horticultural census and national gardening surveys, a striking opportunity appears. If just a fraction of that ornamental acreage were swapped for a carefully selected mix of 9 perennial edibles, a typical 600 square foot patch could yield between $200 and $500 in gourmet crops every year. The numbers are not just theoretical. Specialty farmers market prices for these perennials, with rhubarb stalks at up to $3 per pound, dried daylily buds topping $30 per pound, and sorrel and sea kale fetching premium rates, can turn a neglected border into a recurring income stream. Even modest suburban yards, especially those in the Midwest or on the West Coast, can support these plants with little more effort than a standard flower bed. The difference is that instead of a lawn that needs constant care but gives nothing back, these perennials deliver harvests for a decade or more, year after year, while holding their own in the curb appeal contest. The real question is not whether these numbers add up. They do. It is why so many homeowners are leaving this food and revenue potential untapped, and what it would take to transform a patch of grass and hydrangeas into a living, edible investment. Maggie Harper's front yard in Bloomington, Indiana, sits quietly behind a Maple Grove HOA sign, its neat edges giving little away. 5 years ago, the yard was standard: boxwoods, a dwarf maple, mulch. Maggie saw possibility. That first spring, she replaced 2 shrubs with clusters of daylily and a slim border of sorrel. Neighbors paused, curious. The HOA sent a reminder about uniformity. Maggie replied with a note and a USDA fact sheet, explaining her choices were both beautiful and edible. The board relented. By year 2, rhubarb and walking onions joined the mix. At the summer block potluck, Maggie served sautéed daylily buds, rhubarb compote, and sorrel salad. Some neighbors praised her, others worried about the rhubarb's wild leaves. Maggie added a mulch mat, and the HOA closed the complaint. A year later, asparagus and sea kale took root. Maggie started a monthly harvest newsletter. A local blog featured her yard, and soon the HOA newsletter called her project a model. Neighbors began asking for seedlings. By the 4th year, 9 perennials filled the beds: Good King Henry, Lovage, Malokia. The HOA debated a formal objection, but after a hearing allowed the layout, citing its educational value and compliance. Last season, Maggie's harvest paid off: 30 pounds of daylily buds at $30 per pound, 25 pounds of rhubarb at $2.50 per pound, and jars of lovage salt at $28 each. Her total, $425. She hosted a garden tour for seniors and watched her grandchildren's TikTok videos about the garden reach 2,500 views. Maggie's yard now feeds her, brings in a modest income, and stands as quiet proof that beauty and productivity can share a front lawn, even under HOA rules. Daylily, rhubarb, sorrel, and asparagus bring an explosion of color and taste to any border, yet each one holds its own as a showpiece. Daylily, Hemerocallis fulva, has been treasured in Chinese gardens for more than 1,000 years, where its golden orange blooms earned a place in both poetry and cuisine. The unopened buds, often called golden needles, fetch up to $30 a pound dried at specialty markets, and a single clump can yield for more than a decade. Rhubarb, with its giant red-veined stalks and lush architectural leaves, first appeared in Chinese medical texts around 2700 BC. Today, a mature plant can produce 25 pounds of tart, edible stalks each spring, with farmers' market prices reaching $2.50 a pound. Sorrel, a perennial herb with arrow-shaped leaves and a sharp, lemony tang, starred in French kitchens by the late 1600s. Its early spring harvest supplies a burst of vitamin C when little else is growing, and it self-seeds to form a vibrant green patch for years. Asparagus, depicted in Egyptian tomb art from 3000 BC, is a true perennial luxury. After a 2-year establishment, a bed yields crisp spears every spring for up to 20 years. Each of these plants stands out not just for their edible value, but for their ability to anchor a landscape with bold foliage, vivid blooms, and reliable harvests, proving that the earliest crops of the season can be both beautiful and bountiful. Sea kale stands out with its broad, silver-blue leaves, lending a sculptural quality once celebrated in British coastal kitchens. By the 18th century, foraged sea kale had become a spring delicacy, and under Queen Victoria, its blanched shoots, kept pale and mild by covering, were served at royal banquets. Today, a single plant can yield up to 7 pounds of shoots each season, with fresh sea kale fetching up to $10 per pound in specialty markets. Walking onion brings movement to the garden. As bulblets mature, heavy stems bend and root, allowing the plant to walk across beds and paths, renewing itself year after year. First described in English manuals from the 1600s, this heirloom produces both slender greens and spicy onions, with each square foot yielding up to half a pound, enough for steady kitchen use. Good King Henry, named in 16th century herbals, was a staple in peasant gardens. Its arrow-shaped leaves and upright growth echo spinach, while Renaissance herbalists praised its nutrition and medicinal value. One plant can supply leaves and spring spears for up to 7 years, blending resilience with quiet beauty. Lovage brings an aromatic punch to the perennial lineup, rising each summer with tall, celery-like stems and feathery green leaves. The scent is sharp and unmistakable. A single plant perfumes the air and flavors entire meals. Lovage has deep roots in European kitchens and apothecaries. It was first described by Pliny the Elder in 77 AD as both a culinary herb and a medicinal staple. Its leaves, seeds, and stems found their way into broths and breads across the Middle Ages. Today, the tradition lives on in jars of lovage salt, a gourmet seasoning that can fetch $25 to $28 a piece at specialty markets. Even a modest patch yields enough leaves to supply a home cook and produce a handful of high-value jars each season. The plant's upright form and glossy foliage hold their own in any ornamental border, rivaling classic architectural shrubs. Egyptian spinach, or Molochia, closes out the nine with a legacy that stretches back more than 4,000 years along the Nile. Archaeobotanical finds confirm its presence in ancient Egyptian settlements, and medieval Arabic manuscripts detail its role as a staple green. The leaves, tender and mucilaginous, are the heart of Egypt's national stew, a dish passed from pharaohs to modern kitchens. Molochia's productivity is as enduring as its history. A single planting can yield up to 1/3 of a pound of leaves per year for 2 to 3 seasons. With its rich green canopy and delicate heart-shaped leaves, Molochia adds both visual softness and culinary depth to the perennial border. Together, lovage and Molochia round out a garden that is as rich in flavor as it is in heritage, anchoring the lineup with seasoning and sustenance that span continents and centuries. A single 9-plant perennial block, roughly 27 square feet, brings in $18 to $22 each season at median farmers market prices. That translates to about 33 cents per square foot, a figure that holds steady whether the mix includes daylily, rhubarb, or Good King Henry. Multiply that by just 600 square feet, the size of a modest border, and the annual yield lands between $200 and $500 in gross value. These numbers reflect real-world yields from extension trials and average prices from USDA-AMS reports, not just optimistic catalog claims. The math is simple. Beauty and productivity can occupy the same space, and the return is measurable in dollars as well as blooms. In 2023, Columbus, Ohio, updated its zoning code to officially allow food-producing perennials in front yards, provided basic setback and height rules are followed. This reflects a wider trend. More cities are recognizing that edible landscapes can fit within neighborhood standards as long as they remain tidy and well labeled. To prevent confusion between edible perennials and their toxic lookalikes, many gardeners now use quick reference ID cards or clear plant tags with both common and botanical names. These small steps, following local codes and labeling plants, reduce the risk of misidentification and help ensure that a productive, beautiful garden is also a safe one. Every square foot of ornamental lawn is a choice, beauty alone or beauty that feeds. Perennial edibles like asparagus and daylily can yield for decades, turning garden borders into lasting food sources. In a world facing rising food costs, that is more than design. It is resilience. What would you plant?